The invasion begins. Commander Lyra stood at the helm of the Zephyrian mothership, her iridescent skin shimmering under the soft blue glow of the command center. Her large, almond-shaped eyes, a striking violet hue, scanned the holographic display of the blue and green planet before them. Earth, their target, their soon-to-be conquest. Status report. Lyra's melodic voice rang out, a hint of anticipation lacing her words. First Officer Aria stepped forward, her silvery hair cascading down her back in intricate braids. All systems a go, Commander. Our cloaking technology is functioning at optimal levels. The humans remain blissfully unaware of our presence. Lyra allowed herself a small smile. The Zephyrian High Council had chosen well when they appointed her to lead this mission. Years of careful planning and technological advancements had led to this moment. Earth, with its abundant resources and strategic position in the galaxy, would make an excellent addition to the Zephyrian Empire. Excellent, Lyra nodded. Initiate Phase 1 of the invasion protocol. Deploy the advanced teams to key locations across the planet. Remember, we aim for swift and efficient conquest. Minimal casualties, maximum impact. As her orders were relayed throughout the ship, Lyra couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity about the humans. Intelligence reports painted them as a primitive species, barely venturing beyond their own moon. Yet, there was something about their resilience, their adaptability, that intrigued her. No matter, she thought, pushing the feeling aside. In less than 15 Earth minutes, their world would belong to the Zephyrians. Little did Lyra know, those 15 minutes would change everything. Jack Morrison yawned as he locked up his small electronics repair shop in downtown Seattle. Another day, another dozen smartphones with cracked screens and laptops with mysterious viruses. As he turned to head home, a flash of light in the sky caught his attention. That's weird, he muttered, squinting up at the night sky. The lights seemed to be getting bigger, brighter. For a moment, Jack wondered if he was witnessing a meteor. But as the object drew closer, its movements too controlled, too precise, he felt a chill run down his spine. Oh shit, he breathed, fumbling for his phone. His fingers trembled as he tried to capture video of the descending object. This was it, wasn't it? The moment every sci-fi nerd had simultaneously dreamed of and dreaded. First contact. As the sleek, silver craft touched down in the middle of the street, Jack found himself rooted to the spot. He should run, he knew that. But curiosity and awe overrode his survival instincts. The ship's surface rippled like liquid metal, and with a soft hiss, a hatch materialized. Jack's jaw dropped as the first figure emerged. She, and it was undeniably a she, stood at least 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like opal and hair that seemed to float around her head as if underwater. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed with an inner light. More figures followed, each as breathtakingly alien and beautiful as the first. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their steps silent on the asphalt. Jack realized he was still recording, his phone forgotten in his hand as he gaped at the scene before him. The leader, distinguishable by the intricate patterns on her suit, stepped forward. Her gaze swept the area, finally landing on Jack. He felt pinned in place by those eyes, which seemed to glow brighter as they focused on him. Human, her voice was melodic, with an accent he couldn't place. You will take us to your leaders. Jack blinked, his brain struggling to process the situation. I don't suppose you'd settle for the night manager at the 7-Eleven down the street. The alien tilted her head, confusion evident in her expression. We do not understand. We are here to facilitate the smooth transition of your planet's governance to the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance is inadvisable. Right, Jack nodded, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in his throat. Alien invasion. Got it. Look, I hate to break it to you, but Earth doesn't exactly have a unified government. It's more like a few hundred squabbling countries with nuclear weapons. You might want to rethink your strategy. The alien leader frowned, an expression that somehow made her even more beautiful. This complicates matters. Our intelligence suggested a swift takeover would be possible. Yeah, well, your intelligence might need an update, Jack found himself saying, wondering at his own audacity. Here he was, snarking at beings who could probably vaporize him with a thought. Earth's a mess, but it's our mess. We're kind of attached to it. The leader turned to confer with her companions, their musical language unlike anything Jack had ever heard. He took the opportunity to send his video to every news outlet and social media platform he could think of. If this was the end of human civilization as they knew it, at least he'd go viral first. After what seemed like an eternity, the alien leader turned back to Jack. Human, you will accompany us. We require more information about your world. Whoa, hold on, Jack held up his hands. I'm just a guy who fixes phones for a living. I'm not exactly an expert on, well, anything. Yet you speak to us without fear, the alien observed. You offer insights our extensive research failed to provide. You will be useful. Before Jack could protest further, he felt a tingling sensation envelop his body. The street around him began to fade, replaced by the metallic interior of the alien craft. As the realization of what was happening hit him, Jack had only one coherent thought. I should have stayed late to fix that last iPhone. Back on the mothership, Laura paced the command center, her usual composure shaken. Reports were coming in from advanced teams across the planet, and none of them were good. Rio de Janeiro, Lagos, Mumbai, Tokyo, everywhere, their carefully laid plans were unraveling in the face of Earth's chaotic reality. This is unprecedented, Aria said, her voice tight with frustration. How could our intelligence have been so wrong? Laura's mind raced. Years of planning, the resources poured into this mission, the expectations of the High Council, it couldn't all be for nothing. She thought of the human she'd encountered, his odd mixture of fear and defiance. There was something there, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. We need to reassess, Lyra decided. Recall all advanced teams. We'll establish a base of operations and gather more information before proceeding. As her orders were carried out, Laura found her gaze drawn to the holographic image of Earth rotating slowly before her. Such a small planet, yet so full of contradictions and complexities. For the first time in her career, she felt a flicker of doubt. What if they had underestimated these humans? Jack's head spun as he materialized in what he could only assume was the alien's ship. The walls pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light, and the air held a faint scent of ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. Okay, he muttered to himself, don't panic. You're just on an alien spaceship, about to be interrogated by the most beautiful and terrifying beings you've ever seen. No big deal. The alien leader approached him, her movements fluid and graceful. Up close, Jack could see that what he'd taken for skin was actually a fine layer of iridescent scales. I am Commander Lyra of the Zephyrian Empire, she introduced herself. You will answer our questions about your world. Jack swallowed hard. Sure. I'll do my best. But like I said, I'm really not the best person for this. Couldn't you have abducted a scientist or a politician or something? Laura's violet eyes narrowed slightly. We chose you because you showed unexpected qualities. Now, explain to us why your planet lacks a unified governing body. And so began the strangest interview of Jack's life. He found himself explaining concepts like democracy, national sovereignty, and cultural diversity to beings who seemed both fascinated and perplexed by human society. As the questions continued, Jack's initial terror began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of wonder and, oddly enough, pride in humanity. So let me get this straight, he said after a particularly long explanation about the United Nations. You guys have this vast empire, but you all think alike. No disagreements, no debates. Laura exchanged glances with her officers. Uniformity of thought and purpose is the foundation of our society. It is how we have achieved such technological and social advancements. Jack couldn't help but laugh. No offense, but that sounds boring as hell. Look, humans are messy. We fight, we make mistakes, but we also create amazing things because of our differences, not in spite of them. As he spoke, Jack noticed something changing in Lyra's expression. The cool detachment was giving way to something that looked almost like curiosity. You speak with passion about your species, Lyra observed. Yet our data suggests humans often engage in destructive behaviors towards each other and your planet. How do you reconcile this? Jack ran a hand through his hair, searching for the right words. Yeah, we've got our problems, big ones, but we're also capable of incredible kindness, creativity, and resilience. For every awful thing humans do, there's someone working to make things better. He thought for a moment, then continued, Look, if you really want to understand Earth, you can't just rely on data. You need to experience it, the good and the bad. Lyra was silent for a long moment, her gaze intense as she studied Jack. Finally, she turned to her officers. Prepare a secure location on the surface. We will establish an observation post to gather more experiential data. Jack's eyes widened. Wait, you're actually going to live among us? What happened to the whole invasion thing? Lyra's lips curved in what might have been a smile. Consider it a tactical reassessment, human. Your world has proven more complex than anticipated. We will learn, then decide our next course of action. As the ship hummed with renewed activity, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just changed the course of human history. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. So, he ventured, any chance I can get a ride back to my shop? I've got a lot of confused customers to explain this to. Lyra's almost smile widened fractionally. Your assistance has been most valuable, Jack Morrison. I believe we will have much more to discuss in the coming days. As he was led away to be returned to Earth, Jack's mind reeled with the implications of what had just happened. One thing was certain, life on Earth was about to get a whole lot more interesting. Unexpected complications. 2 weeks had passed since the Zephyrians' arrival, and Seattle was a city transformed. The sleek, silver structure that now dominated the skyline, officially designated as an Earth observation post, but quickly dubbed the Alien Embassy by locals, had become the center of a media frenzy. Tourists and journalists from around the world flocked to catch a glimpse of the otherworldly visitors, while governments scrambled to establish diplomatic protocols for this unprecedented situation. For Jack Morrison, life had taken a surreal turn. His small electronics repair shop had become an unlikely hub of alien-human interaction, thanks to his unexpected role as the Zephyrians' first human contact. He'd lost count of the number of times he'd had to explain that no, he couldn't get anyone a private audience with the aliens, and yes, they really were that tall in person. As Jack locked up the shop for the night, he noticed a familiar shimmer in the air. He sighed, half exasperated and half amused. You know, most people use the door, he called out. The air rippled and Commander Lyra materialized before him, her opalescent skin gleaming under the streetlights. Doors are inefficient, she stated matter-of-factly. Besides, I enjoy seeing your startled expression. Jack rolled his eyes, but he couldn't suppress a grin. Over the past 2 weeks, he'd gotten to know the Zephyrian commander better, and he discovered an unexpected dry wit beneath her serene exterior. To what do I owe the pleasure this time? More questions about human mating rituals or our obsession with cat videos? Lyra's expression turned serious. We have encountered an unexpected complication. Your expertise is required. Before Jack could ask for clarification, he felt the now familiar tingle of teleportation. The street dissolved around him, replaced by the sterile interior of the Zephyrian medical bay. Okay, Jack said slowly, taking in the array of unfamiliar equipment and the worried faces of the Zephyrian medical staff. This looks serious. What's going on? Lyra led him to an examination table where a young Zephyrian female lay, her usually luminescent skin pale and dull. This is Naya, one of our junior science officers. She has been affected by something on your planet. Our medical technology cannot identify the cause. Jack frowned, concern overriding his usual sarcasm. "I'm not a doctor, Lyra. I'm not sure how I can help." "You are human," Lyra stated, as if that explained everything. "You understand this world in ways we do not. Perhaps you will see something we have missed." Feeling out of his depth but determined to help, Jack approached Naya. "Hey there," he said gently. "I'm Jack. Can you tell me how you're feeling?" Naya's large eyes focused on him, filled with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Everything feels strange. My body is not responding correctly, and there is a sensation here," she placed a hand on her lower abdomen, "that I cannot explain." Jack's eyes widened as a wild possibility entered his mind. "Lyra," he said slowly, "when your people have been exploring Earth, have any of them had, intimate contact with humans?" Lyra's brow furrowed. "There have been some cultural exchange activities. We believed it would aid in our understanding of human society. Why do you ask?" Jack ran a hand through his hair, searching for a delicate way to phrase his suspicion. "Look, I'm no expert, but the symptoms Naya's describing, in a human woman, they might indicate pregnancy." The medical bay erupted into a flurry of musical Zephyrian exclamations. Lyra's usual composure cracked, her eyes wide with shock. "Pregnancy? But that's impossible. Our species are not compatible." "Yeah, well, life finds a way," Jack muttered, thinking of all the sci-fi movies that had explored this very scenario. "You might want to run whatever the Zephyrian equivalent of a pregnancy test is." The next few hours were a blur of activity. More Zephyrians came forward with similar symptoms, each having participated in cultural exchanges with humans. As test after test confirmed Jack's suspicion, the implications began to sink in. "This is unprecedented," Lyra said, her voice tight with stress. "In all our explorations, we have never encountered a species with whom we could reproduce. The High Council must be informed immediately." Jack watched as the Zephyrians grappled with this shocking development. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy, remembering his own panic during false alarm pregnancy scares in college. "Look," he said, addressing the room at large, "I know this is a huge deal for you guys, but try to remember that there are humans involved in this too. Whatever happens next, we need to handle this carefully." Lyra nodded, visibly pulling herself together. "You are right, Jack Morrison. This situation requires delicacy and cooperation." She turned to her medical staff, issuing rapid-fire orders in Zephyrian. As the initial shock began to wear off, Jack found his mind racing with questions. How was this even biologically possible? What would Zephyrian-human hybrid children be like? And perhaps most pressingly, how the hell were they going to explain this to the world? One of the affected Zephyrians, a willowy female named Zara, approached Jack hesitantly. "Human Jack," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What can you tell us about human gestation and child-rearing practices? I find myself unprepared for this eventuality." Jack blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. How had he, a guy who could barely keep houseplants alive, become the go-to expert on human reproduction for an alien species? "Well," he began, searching for a place to start, "first thing you should know is that human pregnancies last about 9 months." As he launched into an explanation cobbled together from high school biology classes and vague memories of friends' pregnancies, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that his life had taken a turn into the truly bizarre. Alien invasions were one thing, but alien baby showers, that was a whole new level of weird. Meanwhile, in another part of the observation post, Lyra was engaged in a tense communication with the Zephyrian High Council. The holographic projections of the council members flickered with agitation as they absorbed the news. "This is unacceptable," declared High Councillor Vex, his usually melodious voice sharp with anger. "The mission was to conquer, not to integrate. You have failed us, Commander Lyra." Lyra stood tall, her chin raised defiantly. "With respect, High Councillor, this development opens up new possibilities. Think of the potential scientific advancements, the opportunity to combine our strengths with those of the humans. And what of the human governments? Asked another council member. How have they reacted to this news? Lyra hesitated. We have not yet informed them. We wish to consult with the council first. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of Zephyrian arguments. Some saw opportunity in this unexpected turn of events, while others demanded an immediate withdrawal from Earth. As the debate raged, Lyra found her thoughts turning to Jack and the other humans she'd met during their time on Earth. She thought of their resilience, their adaptability, their infuriating yet somehow endearing unpredictability. Enough, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. The council fell silent, unused to being addressed in such a manner. High Council, I request permission to continue our mission on Earth with a revised objective. Let us approach this not as conquerors, but as allies. These humans have shown themselves to be far more complex and valuable than our initial assessments suggested. For a long moment, silence reigned in the council chamber. Then, slowly, High Councillor Vex nodded. Very well, Commander. You have one Earth year to prove the value of this alliance. Do not disappoint us again. As the transmission ended, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. She had bought them time, but the real challenges were just beginning. Turning on her heel, she strode purposefully towards the medical bay. There was much to discuss with Jack and the others. Back in the medical bay, Jack had somehow found himself in the middle of an impromptu class on human pregnancy and childcare. Zephyrians crowded around him, peppering him with questions that ranged from the biological to the philosophical. So, the human fetus develops inside the body for 9 months. Asked one wide-eyed Zephyrian, how inefficient. Our gestation pods are much more practical. Yeah, well, we're kind of stuck with the old-fashioned method, Jack replied, wondering for the 100th time how this had become his life. Look, there's a lot we don't know here. We need to get human doctors involved, set up some kind of joint research team. The doors slid open, and Lyra entered, her expression a mixture of determination and something Jack couldn't quite identify. Hope, maybe. Jack is right, she announced. We must work together with the humans to navigate this unprecedented situation. She turned to Jack, her violet eyes intense. We will need your help to facilitate communication with your world's leaders. The next few months will be crucial for the future of both our species. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. All right, he said, squaring his shoulders. Let's go make some history. As they left the medical bay together, neither Jack nor Lyra could have predicted the challenges, surprises, and wonders that lay ahead. The Zephyrian invasion had failed, but something far more interesting was just beginning. Cultural clashes and connections. The news of the Zephyrian pregnancies hit the world like a tsunami. Governments scrambled to respond, religious leaders debated the theological implications, and social media exploded with a mixture of excitement, fear, and an unprecedented number of alien-themed memes. In Seattle, the alien embassy had become ground zero for this brave new world of human-Zephyrian relations. A hastily assembled team of human and Zephyrian scientists worked around the clock, studying the unprecedented pregnancies and attempting to predict what the hybrid children might be like. Jack Morrison, much to his ongoing bewilderment, found himself at the center of it all. His unique position as the Zephyrians' first human contact had thrust him into the role of unofficial ambassador, mediator, and cultural translator. No, Commander Lyra, Jack sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. They were in the middle of yet another meeting with human government officials, and things were not going smoothly. When the Secretary of State said she wanted to touch base, she didn't mean it literally. It's just an expression for having a discussion. Lyra frowned, her opalescent skin shimmering with confusion. Human language is needlessly complicated. Why not simply say what you mean? The Secretary of State, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Hawkins, cleared her throat. Perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. The public is demanding answers about these pregnancies. We need a unified statement, and soon. Jack nodded, trying to channel the diplomacy skills he'd been frantically developing over the past month. Right. So, we stick to the facts. Yes, some Zephyrians are pregnant with hybrid children. Yes, this was unexpected. No, it's not part of some sinister alien plot. We emphasize that both sides are working together to understand this unique situation. As the meeting continued, Jack couldn't help but marvel at how quickly the world had adapted to the presence of the Zephyrians. Oh, there had been panic at first, along with the inevitable conspiracy theories and doomsday predictions, but humans, as always, proved remarkably adaptable. The real challenges, Jack had discovered, lay in the day-to-day interactions between the two species. Cultural misunderstandings were a constant source of both frustration and amusement. Take, for example, the Great Picnic incident of last week. In an attempt to introduce the Zephyrians to human social customs, Jack had organized a picnic in a local park. It had started well enough, with the aliens marveling at the concept of eating outdoors for pleasure. But things had taken a turn when a well-meaning Zephyrian, fascinated by the idea of finger foods, had attempted to eat a frisbee. All the time Zara, one of the pregnant Zephyrians, had caused a minor panic by innocently asking a supermarket employee where she could find nutrient pods for gestating offspring. It had taken Jack an hour to explain the concept of pregnancy cravings and why, no, humans did not have specialized feeding capsules for fetuses. As the meeting wrapped up, Jack's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Emily Chen, the lead human scientist on the hybrid pregnancy research team. Need you at the lab ASAP. Breakthrough in fetal development study. Excusing himself, Jack hurried to the research facility that had been set up within the alien embassy. He found Dr. Chen practically bouncing with excitement, her usually tidy lab coat askew. "Jack, you're not going to believe this," she grinned, grabbing his arm and pulling him towards a complex array of holographic displays. "We've managed to get detailed scans of the hybrid fetuses. Look." Jack peered at the swirling 3D images, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Not to state the obvious, Doc, but I'm not exactly trained in xenobiology. What am I looking at?" Dr. Chen's eyes sparkled. "That's just it, Jack. It's not entirely xenobiology. These fetuses, they're incredible. They seem to be adopting the best traits from both species. The Zephyrian adaptability, their enhanced sensory capabilities, combined with human creativity and emotional range. And look at this," she pointed to a specific area of the scan. "Their brains are developing neural pathways we've never seen before. The potential here it's beyond anything we could have imagined." As Jack absorbed this information, he felt a mixture of awe and trepidation. These children, whenever they were born, would change everything. They would be a bridge between two worlds, a living symbol of what humanity and Zephyrians could accomplish together. But they would also face challenges unlike any children before them. How would they fit into either society? What kind of lives would they lead? His musings were interrupted by the arrival of Lyra, who had apparently concluded the meeting with the government officials. Her eyes widened as she took in the fetal scans. "Extraordinary," she breathed, her usual composure slipping to reveal genuine wonder. "Our peoples, once so different, creating new life together. Perhaps this is the true purpose of our coming to Earth." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Bit more poetic than your original invasion plans, huh?" Lyra's lips curved in what Jack had come to recognize as her version of a smile. "Indeed, it seems Earth has changed us as much as we have changed it." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by a commotion from the hallway. Jack and Lyra exchanged glances before hurrying to investigate. They found a crowd gathered around Zara, who was clutching her swollen abdomen and looking panicked. "Something is wrong," she gasped. "The offspring, it moves in strange ways. Is this normal?" Dr. Chen pushed through the crowd, her professional demeanor taking over. "It's all right, Zara. Human babies often become very active at this stage. It's called quickening. It means the baby is healthy and developing well." As Dr. Chen led Zara away for a more thorough examination, Jack couldn't help but chuckle at the look of utter bewilderment on the faces of the Zephyrian onlookers. "All right, folks," he called out, slipping into his now familiar role of cultural translator. "Gather round. Today's lesson is on the joys and terrors of human pregnancy. First thing you need to know, mood swings are real, and they are scary." As Jack launched into his impromptu lecture, complete with wildly exaggerated gestures and probably more personal anecdotes than strictly necessary, he caught Lyra watching him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked, pausing mid-explanation of the human craving for pickles and ice cream. Lyra tilted her head, her violet eyes intense. "You continue to surprise me, Jack Morrison. Your ability to adapt, to find humor in the strangest situations. It is most intriguing." Jack felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "Yeah, well, that's humanity for you. We're full of surprises." As the day wore on and Jack found himself mediating yet another cultural misunderstanding, no, Zephyrians could not upgrade human technology with their advanced knowledge. Something about respecting the natural development of species, he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The world was still adjusting to the reality of alien life, still grappling with the implications of these hybrid pregnancies. There were still those who feared the Zephyrians, who protested their presence on Earth. But there were also countless stories of connection, of humans and Zephyrians finding common ground in the most unexpected ways. There was the group of Zephyrian scientists who had become oddly obsessed with human music, hosting weekly cultural exchange concerts that had become the hottest ticket in town. The sight of towering, iridescent aliens headbanging to heavy metal would stay with Jack for a long time. Or the human chef who had taken it upon herself to create Zephyrian-inspired cuisine, resulting in dishes that glowed in the dark and tasted like nothing on Earth, some in a good way, others not so much. And then there were the small, everyday moments. Zephyrians marveling at the simple pleasure of feeling rain on their skin. Humans gathering in awe to watch Zephyrian light-weaving ceremonies. Two very different species, slowly, sometimes awkwardly, learning to coexist. As night fell over Seattle, Jack found himself on the observation deck of the alien embassy, looking out over the city lights. Lyra joined him, her presence a now familiar comfort. "Penny for your thoughts?" Jack asked, then quickly added, "Earth expression. It means, what's on your mind?" Lyra was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I am thinking about the future, Jack. About the children who will be born of our two worlds. They will face many challenges, but they will also have opportunities beyond anything we could have imagined." Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "They'll have us," he said softly. "All of us, human, Zephyrian, we're in this together now." As they stood there, an alien and a human united in contemplation of an uncertain but hopeful future, Jack couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, they were on the brink of something truly extraordinary. The invasion that never was had given way to something far more powerful, a connection between two species that had the potential to change the course of both their civilizations. And Jack, former phone repair guy turned intergalactic diplomat, was right at the heart of it all. He grinned to himself. Life didn't get much stranger than this, or much more exciting. The pregnancy revelation. As the Zephyrian pregnancies progressed, the world watched with bated breath. What had started as a shocking revelation had evolved into a global phenomenon, capturing the imagination of billions. Documentaries were filmed, books were written, and countless speculation filled the airwaves about what these hybrid children would be like. For Jack Morrison, the passage of time had done little to normalize his surreal new life. If anything, each day brought fresh challenges and surprises. Today, he found himself in the middle of yet another press conference, flanked by Lyra and Dr. Emily Chen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. Public speaking was still not his forte, but he'd gotten better at hiding his nerves. "Thank you for coming. We have some significant updates on the Zephyrian human pregnancies to share with you today." He nodded to Dr. Chen, who stepped forward, her excitement palpable. After months of careful study, we can now confirm that the hybrid fetuses are developing at an accelerated rate compared to both human and Zephyrian norms. Based on our projections, we expect the first births to occur within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The room erupted into a frenzy of questions. Jack held up his hands, trying to maintain order. Please, one at a time. Yes, you in the front. A reporter from a major news network stood up. Dr. Chen, can you tell us more about the expected characteristics of these hybrid children? Will they look more human or more Zephyrian? Dr. Chen smiled. That's an excellent question. From what we can observe, the children will likely exhibit a blend of physical traits from both species. They may have the iridescent skin of the Zephyrians, for example, but with more human-like proportions. However, it's their cognitive and physiological capabilities that are truly remarkable. She paused, glancing at Lyra, who gave a slight nod. Our studies indicate that these children may possess enhanced sensory perception, accelerated healing capabilities, and potentially even low-level empathic abilities. Cognitively, they show signs of advanced neural development that could lead to exceptional problem-solving skills and creativity. The room buzzed with excitement. Jack couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. These kids were going to be something special. Another reporter stood up. Commander Lyra, how has the Zephyrian High Council responded to these developments? Are there concerns about the impact on Zephyrian society? Lyra stepped forward, her composure impeccable as always. The High Council recognizes the unprecedented nature of this situation. While there were initial concerns, they now see the potential for great advancements in our understanding of genetics, biology, and interspecies relations. As for our society, we Zephyrians have always valued adaptation and progress. We see these children as a bridge between our worlds, a symbol of what we can achieve together. As the press conference continued, Jack found his mind wandering to the pregnant Zephyrians he'd come to know over the past months. Zara, with her insatiable curiosity about human culture. Naya, who had developed an unexpected passion for Earth's marine life. Each of them navigating this strange new territory with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. After the conference, Jack, Lara, and Dr. Chen retreated to a private room in the alien embassy. As soon as the door closed behind them, Jack let out a long breath. Well, that could have gone worse. At least no one asked about the pickle and ice cream cravings this time. Dr. Chen chuckled, but her expression quickly turned serious. We need to talk about security measures for when the babies are born. The world's attention is going to be intense. We need to protect these families. Lyra nodded, her violet eyes thoughtful. Agreed. I have already been in discussions with your government about establishing a secure facility. These children will need a safe environment to grow and learn, away from excessive scrutiny. Jack frowned. A facility? That sounds a bit cold. These are babies we're talking about, not science experiments. Of course, Lyra assured him. It would be designed with comfort and nurture in mind. Think of it more as a specially equipped community. The Zephyrian parents and their human partners would live there, along with medical staff and educators trained to handle the unique needs of hybrid children. As they delved into the logistics of this plan, Jack couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. Months ago, the idea of humans and Zephyrians co-parenting would have seemed absurd. Now, it was reality they were preparing for. Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent message. Zara had gone into labor. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jack found himself pacing outside the medical bay, alternating between excitement and anxiety. Laura stood nearby, outwardly calm, but with a tension in her posture that betrayed her own nervousness. It's strange, Lyra mused, breaking the silence. On our world, reproduction is a carefully controlled process. Genetic material is combined in laboratories. Offspring are developed in gestation pods. This, natural childbirth, it seems so unpredictable. Jack couldn't help but laugh. Welcome to the messy, beautiful chaos of human reproduction. Trust me, even when it's just humans involved, it's always unpredictable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they heard it, the cry of a newborn. But this was unlike any baby's cry Jack had ever heard. It was melodic, almost like a song, yet unmistakably the sound of new life announcing its arrival. Dr. Chen emerged from the medical bay, her face alight with wonder. "They're here," she breathed. "Come and see." Jack and Lyra exchanged glances before following her inside. There, cradled in Zora's arms, was a sight that took Jack's breath away. The baby girl, because it was undoubtedly a girl, had skin that shimmered with a soft, pearlescent glow. Her eyes, when she briefly opened them, were a swirling mix of human pupil and iris surrounded by the larger, more luminous Zephyrian eye structure. Wisps of hair that seemed to shimmer between silver and gold adorned her delicate head. But it was more than her appearance that struck Jack. There was an energy about her, a presence that seemed to fill the room. He felt a wave of emotion wash over him, joy, wonder, a fierce protectiveness. "She's beautiful," Jack whispered, unable to take his eyes off the infant. Zora looked up, her face radiant with a mother's love that transcended species. "She is a miracle," she said softly, "a bridge between our worlds." As news of the first hybrid birth spread, the world seemed to hold its collective breath. Over the next few days, more Zephyrian mothers went into labor. Each birth brought new marvels, each child unique in their blend of human and alien traits. The media clamored for images, for interviews, for any scrap of information about these extraordinary infants. Governments debated their legal status. Religious leaders sought to reconcile their beliefs with this new reality. And through it all, in the secure wings of the alien embassy, new families began to form. Jack found himself in the role of unofficial uncle to these remarkable children. He watched in awe as they developed at an astonishing rate, achieving milestones in weeks that would take human babies months. But it wasn't all wonder and excitement. The first signs of the challenges these children would face came early. Some of the infants displayed powers that were difficult to control, bursts of empathic projection that could overwhelm those around them, or sudden shifts in their skin's bioluminescence that could light up an entire room. As Jack watched Dr. Chen and her team work tirelessly to understand and help manage these abilities, he was struck by the magnitude of what they were undertaking. These children were not just a scientific marvel or a diplomatic breakthrough. They were the future, a living bridge between two worlds that had once been poised for conflict. One evening, as Jack was helping to settle one of the fussy hybrid infants, a boy whose cries could literally be heard on a frequency beyond human hearing, Lyra approached him. "You are good with them," she observed, her tone carrying a warmth that had become more common in recent weeks. Jack shrugged, gently rocking the baby. "I'm making it up as I go, just like everyone else. But these kids, they're special, Lyra. They're going to change everything." Lyra was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the infant. "When we first came to Earth, we thought we understood your species. We saw your conflicts, your divisions, and we believed you to be primitive, in need of our guidance and control." She shook her head, a rueful smile playing on her lips. "We were so wrong. Your capacity for adaptation, for love, for finding connection in the most unlikely places, it is truly remarkable. These children are proof of that." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. "Yeah, well, you guys aren't so bad yourselves. For a bunch of would-be conquerors, you've turned out to be pretty decent neighbors." As they stood there, an unlikely pair watching over a child that represented the best of both their species, Jack felt a sense of hope stronger than anything he'd ever experienced. The road ahead would be challenging, no doubt. These children would face obstacles and prejudices, would have to forge identities in a world that had never seen anything like them before. But looking at the sleeping infant in his arms, Jack knew one thing for certain: the future was bright, and it was more beautiful and strange than anyone could have imagined. The invasion that never was had given way to a connection, a blending of two species that promised to unlock potential beyond imagining. And somehow, improbably, Jack Morrison, former phone repair guy, reluctant diplomat, and now honorary uncle to a new breed of hybrid children, was right at the heart of it all. As he handed the now sleeping baby back to his Zephyrian mother, Jack couldn't help but grin. Life had taken him on one hell of a ride, and he had a feeling the real adventure was just beginning. Diplomatic negotiations. The birth of the hybrid children had sent shockwaves through both human and Zephyrian societies. As the infants grew at an astonishing rate, displaying abilities that defied conventional understanding, the need for clear protocols and agreements became increasingly urgent. Jack Morrison found himself at the center of a diplomatic storm. The alien embassy in Seattle had become a hub of intense negotiations, with representatives from Earth's major powers and the Zephyrian High Council engaged in round-the-clock talks. On this particular morning, Jack stood before a mirror, adjusting the tie of the suit he still wasn't comfortable wearing. He much preferred his old jeans and t-shirts, but Lyra had insisted that he dress the part of a diplomatic liaison. "You clean up nice, phone guy," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Jack turned to see Sarah Chen, Dr. Emily Chen's younger sister and now his personal assistant, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. Jack rolled his eyes. "Thanks. Any chance you want to take my place in today's meeting? I hear the Zephyrian High Council is just delightful to negotiate with." Sarah snorted. "Not a chance. But heads up, there's been a change of plans. The UN Secretary-General is joining the talks via hologram. Apparently, the situation has been deemed too critical for lower-level diplomats." Jack groaned. "Fantastic. No pressure or anything." As they made their way to the conference room, Jack's mind raced through the key issues they needed to address: the legal status of the hybrid children, education protocols, healthcare, and perhaps most pressingly, how to protect these extraordinary kids from those who saw them as a threat or wanted to exploit their abilities. The conference room was a study in contrasts. On one side sat the human delegation, stern-faced politicians and military officials, their stiff postures betraying their unease. On the other, the Zephyrians, their iridescent skin shimmering under the lights, their alien features impassive. At the head of the table, a highly detailed hologram of UN Secretary-General Adebayo flickered to life. His deep voice filled the room. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored Zephyrian guests, we are here today to discuss matters that will shape the future of both our species. Let us proceed with wisdom and open minds." As the talks began, Jack found himself in the familiar role of translator, not just of language, but of culture and intent. He'd learned that the Zephyrians' direct manner of speech often came across as brusque to humans, while human diplomatic niceties confused and frustrated the aliens. The Zephyrian High Council proposes that all hybrid children be raised in specialized facilities under joint human-Zephyrian supervision, stated the lead Zephyrian diplomat, his tone matter-of-fact. Jack winced, already anticipating the human reaction. Sure enough, the room erupted into protests. "Absolutely not," thundered the US Secretary of State. "We will not allow these children to be treated like lab specimens." Jack held up his hands, trying to calm the situation. "I think what our Zephyrian friends mean is that these children have unique needs that might be best met in a specially equipped environment. Not a lab, but more like a very advanced school." He glanced at Lyra, who gave a slight nod of approval. Over the months, they developed an almost telepathic ability to understand each other's intentions. The hologram of Secretary-General Adebayo leaned forward. "Perhaps a compromise is in order. What if we establish several such facilities around the world, jointly staffed and overseen, but with regular interaction with the wider community? These children should not be isolated, but they do need protection and specialized care." The discussions continued, hour after grueling hour. They debated the children's legal status. Would they be citizens of Earth, or of the Zephyrian Empire, or both? How would their rights be protected? What about the rights of their parents? As the day wore on, Jack found his patience wearing thin. The politicians seemed more concerned with power plays and saving face than with the well-being of the children he'd come to care for deeply. Finally, during a brief recess, he pulled Lyra aside. "This isn't working," he said quietly. "They're all so caught up in the big picture that they're forgetting what's really important." Lyra tilted her head, her violet eyes studying him intently. "What do you propose, Jack Morrison?" Jack ran a hand through his hair, an idea forming. "I think it's time they met the kids. Not just read reports about them or see videos, really met them." Lyra's lips curved in her version of a smile. A bold move. It could be seen as manipulative. "Or it could remind everyone what's really at stake here," Jack countered. After a moment's consideration, Lyra nodded. "Very well. I trust your judgment in these matters, Jack. You have a unique insight into the human heart." And so, when the delegates reconvened, they found the conference room transformed. The long table had been removed, replaced by a colorful play area, and there, under the watchful eyes of their parents and Dr. Chen's medical team, were a dozen hybrid children. The delegates froze, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. Jack stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, honored Zephyrians, I'd like you to meet the future we've all been arguing about." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a small girl with shimmering golden skin and eyes that swirled with galaxies toddled up to the stern-faced Russian diplomat. She reached out a tiny hand and touched his knee. Suddenly, the man's eyes widened, his harsh features softening into a look of wonder. What was that?" he breathed. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice gentle. "That was Aria sharing her emotions with you, sir. The hybrid children have a unique form of empathic projection. She was simply saying hello." One by one, the children approached the delegates. Some showed off their abilities, creating miniature light shows with their bioluminescent skin, or levitating small objects with burgeoning telekinetic powers. Others simply wanted to be held or to babble in a strange mixture of human language and Zephyrian tones. Jack watched as the atmosphere in the room transformed. Hardened politicians melted under the guileless gazes of these extraordinary children. Zephyrian diplomats, usually so reserved, found themselves laughing at the antics of the hybrid toddlers. The Secretary General's hologram flickered as he leaned forward, his eyes fixed on a young boy who was earnestly trying to explain his crayon drawing, a picture that seemed to depict both Earth and the Zephyrian homeworld. "Remarkable," Adebayo murmured. "Truly remarkable." As the impromptu play session wound down and the children were led away for their naps, Jack addressed the room once more. "These kids aren't just a diplomatic issue or a scientific curiosity. They're the future, not just of humanity or of the Zephyrians, but of both our species together. Whatever we decide here will shape their lives and the lives of countless others to come." The mood in the room had shifted palpably. When negotiations resumed, there was a new sense of purpose, a willingness to find common ground that hadn't been there before. Over the next few days, progress was made at a startling pace. Agreements were reached on joint education initiatives, on healthcare protocols that would cater to the hybrid children's unique physiologies, on legal frameworks that would protect their rights as citizens of both Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. There were still hurdles to overcome, of course. Some human nations remained wary of the Zephyrian presence on Earth. Fringe groups on both sides protested against what they saw as the dilution of their species. But for every voice raised in fear or anger, there were many more speaking out in support of this new future. As the final documents were being prepared for signing, Jack found a quiet moment with Lyra on the embassy's observation deck. The Seattle skyline glittered before them, a testament to human innovation that now stood alongside Zephyrian marvels. "We did it," Jack said, a note of wonder in his voice. "It's not perfect, but it's a start." Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Indeed, when we first arrived on your world, Jack Morrison, I could never have imagined this outcome. You humans continue to surprise me." Jack grinned. That's kind of our specialty. Keeps life interesting. As they stood there, an unlikely pair who had become the bridge between two worlds, Jack felt a sense of hope stronger than ever before. The road ahead would be challenging, no doubt. Integrating the hybrid children into society, managing their growing abilities, navigating the complex dance of human-Zephyrian relations, none of it would be easy. But looking out at the city where it had all begun, Jack knew one thing for certain. The future was brighter and more full of possibility than anyone could have dreamed. The invasion that never was had given way to a connection, a partnership that promised to unlock the potential of both their species. And somehow, improbably, Jack Morrison, former phone repair guy turned intergalactic diplomat, was right at the heart of it all. As a shooting star streaked across the sky, or was it a Zephyrian ship? Jack couldn't help but smile. The adventure was far from over. In fact, he had a feeling it was just beginning. A new future. 5 years had passed since the Zephyrians first arrived on Earth, and the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Seattle skyline, once dominated by the Space Needle, now featured the graceful spirals of Zephyrian architecture alongside human skyscrapers. Hybrid children played in parks specially designed to accommodate their unique abilities, their laughter a melodic blend of human and alien tones. Jack Morrison, dressed in a suit that still felt a bit too formal despite years of diplomatic work, stood at the podium in front of the United Nations General Assembly. The chamber was packed, with human delegates sitting side by side with their Zephyrian counterparts. Holographic projections allowed millions around the world to watch the proceedings. 5 years ago, Jack began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. We stood on the brink of what we thought was an invasion. Instead, we found ourselves at the beginning of the greatest adventure in human history. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces, human, Zephyrian, and the growing number that were beautifully, uniquely both. Today, we're here to ratify the Earth-Zephyria Cooperative Accord. This document is more than just a treaty. It's a roadmap for our shared future, a commitment to exploring the stars together, to combining our knowledge and abilities in ways that will benefit both our peoples. As Jack continued his speech, his mind wandered to the journey that had brought them all to this point. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, moments of fear and doubt. He remembered the protests that had erupted when the first hybrid children started attending regular schools, the panic when a teenage hybrid accidentally triggered a citywide blackout with a surge of electromagnetic energy. But for every challenge, there had been moments of triumph and wonder. The breakthrough in clean energy technology that came from combining Zephyrian quantum mechanics with human innovation. The medical advancements that had eradicated several major diseases. The first joint human-Zephyrian mission to Mars, which had returned with evidence of ancient microbial life. We stand at a crossroads, Jack continued, pulling himself back to the present. The path ahead is not without its challenges, but together, we have the opportunity to create a future brighter than either of our species could have achieved alone. As he concluded his speech to thunderous applause, Jack caught Lyra's eye in the audience. She gave him a slight nod, her violet eyes shimmering with an emotion that, after all these years, he could finally recognize as pride. The ratification process was swift, years of negotiation and preparation culminating in this historic moment. As the final votes were tallied and the accord was officially adopted, the chamber erupted in cheers. Jack found himself engulfed in a sea of congratulations, handshakes from humans mixing with the more formal Zephyrian gestures of respect. Hours later, as the celebrations wound down, Jack found a quiet moment on a balcony overlooking the New York skyline. Lyra joined him, her presence as familiar and comforting as ever. "You've come a long way from the human who made jokes about 7-Eleven managers during first contact," Lyra remarked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Jack chuckled. "And you've come a long way from the alien commander bent on conquering Earth. I'd say we've both had quite the journey." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues that reminded Jack of Zephyrian's skin. "What happens now?" Jack asked, voicing the question that had been on his mind throughout the day's events. Laura turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "Now, we truly begin. The Accord opens up new possibilities, joint scientific endeavors, cultural exchanges on a scale we've never attempted before, and of course we must continue to support and guide the hybrid children as they come into their own." Jack nodded, thinking of the extraordinary kids he'd watched grow over the past 5 years. The oldest were entering their teens now, their abilities developing in ways that continued to astonish both human and Zephyrian scientists. They were the living embodiment of what could be achieved when two vastly different species came together. "You know," Jack mused, "when I was a kid, I used to dream about aliens, little green men in flying saucers, that sort of thing. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine this." Laura's lips curved in her version of a smile. "And I never imagined I would find myself so invested in the fate of a species we once considered primitive. You humans have a saying, do you not? Life is full of surprises." Jack laughed. "That we do. And speaking of surprises, I've got news. The Joint Space Program. They want us to lead the next mission. Something about the original human Zephyrian team being the perfect choice to represent both our peoples as we push further into the galaxy." Laura's eyes widened slightly, a rare display of shock. "Interstellar exploration? That is unexpected. Are you prepared for such an undertaking?" Jack grinned, feeling a surge of excitement he hadn't experienced since those first chaotic days of the Zephyrians' arrival. "Ready as I'll ever be. Question is, are you up for another adventure, Commander?" Laura's expression softened, and she reached out to place a hand on Jack's shoulder, a gesture she'd learned was significant to humans. "With you, Jack Morrison, always." As they turned back to look at the city, Jack felt a sense of anticipation building. The ratification of the Accord wasn't an ending, but a beginning. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt. Integrating two vastly different species, raising a generation of hybrid children, pushing the boundaries of science and exploration, none of it would be easy. But looking out at the world they'd helped shape had the future stretching out before them, filled with possibilities neither of their species could have imagined alone, Jack knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, it was going to be one hell of an adventure. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in a riot of colors. As darkness fell, the first stars began to twinkle into view. Jack and Lyra stood side by side, human and Zephyrian, no longer reluctant allies but true friends, partners in the greatest journey either of their species had ever undertaken. Somewhere out there, among those stars, new adventures waited, new challenges to overcome, new wonders to discover. And they would face them together, two species united in their quest to explore, to understand, to grow. The invasion that never was had given way to something far greater, a partnership that promised to reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. And at the heart of it all was an unlikely duo, a former phone repair guy from Seattle and an alien commander who had learned to see beauty in the chaos of humanity. As a shooting star streaked across the sky, Jack made a quiet wish. Not for himself, but for the future they were building. A future where the best of both worlds would come together to create something truly extraordinary. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning.